The COP29 UN Climate Conference kicks off in Azerbaijan on Monday. Canada will be represented by Environment and Climate Change Minister Steven Guilbeault. He joins us now from Baku. Minister, we appreciate this.
Thank you, Mandalina.
It has been the hottest year on record. The world is experiencing floods, wildfires, and food scarcity. Are we doing enough to save the planet?
No, we're not. Things are improving because of the work we're collectively doing. The forecast for the coming decades in terms of temperature increase is better than it was 10 years ago, but there's still much more that needs to be done.
Okay, and this year's COP29 summit is geared toward climate financing and providing money to developing countries to tackle climate costs.
Yes.
What can we expect to come out of this meeting, and what is Canada's pledge?
So Canada's played a very important role in terms of working with nations like the European Union, Japan, the United States for the last many years in helping to mobilize more than $100 billion to help developing countries adapt to climate change and face the impacts of climate change, and also do the transition that many of us are doing. Now, the discussion this year is what will be the new international goal in terms of how much money we need to mobilize to continue supporting developing countries. And some people who are watching might say, well, why should we be doing that? There's a number of reasons why we should be doing that. First and foremost, the more we help them, the less some of those people will want to come to our countries because of climate impacts and because it's becoming more and more difficult to live in their countries. Second, often those economic opportunities that are developed will be done in partnership between local companies, local communities in these countries, and Canadian companies and Canadian initiatives. So it's a win-win on both sides. So there are a number of reasons why it's important for us to be collectively contributing to support people in the South to adapt and better prepared to face climate change.
And on that note, you mentioned that more can be done to save our planet. So what is Canada's overall commitment to fight climate change, and how has that progress been so far?
Canada doesn't have the best story to tell over the last 30 years in terms of fighting climate change. This has started changing over the last few years. In fact, it's the first time in our history, Amandalina, that we're seeing the economy roaring full steam ahead in the country and our pollution levels going down. This has never happened before. Now we need to do more, and it's a result of a number of things we're doing, putting a price on pollution, putting in place measures to ensure that by 2035, all of the cars sold in Canada will have to be zero-emission vehicles, so either electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles, working to make sure industries like what we're seeing on those type of industries we're seeing on screen are doing their fair share when it comes to reducing their level of pollution, which is why last week in Canada, we announced that we would be putting a cap, a ceiling, if you wish, on the pollution levels of the oil and gas sector, which is our largest contributor in Canada to climate change.
Okay, and this brings me to the carbon tax. It has been a topic of political debate here in Canada. How do you see this conversation shaping up in the future?
Well, what we're seeing is that globally, more and more countries are adopting a form or another of price on pollution. 3 years ago, it was only about 20% of the world that had a form of pollution pricing in place. We're now almost at 25%. So it's growing. There are an increasing number of countries and states and provinces around the world adopting carbon pricing. It is one of the best tools we have to fight pollution. It's not the only one. In Canada, we're deploying more than 140 measures to tackle the climate crisis, but putting a price on pollution is one of the best ways. One of the unique things of the Canadian model is that all of the revenues that are generated from putting a price on pollution are returned to Canadians, either to households, to small and medium-sized businesses, municipalities, and Indigenous communities.
What would you say to the people that are frustrated with the carbon tax?
Well, the parliamentary budget officer in a number of reports has shown that 8 out of 10 Canadian families receive more money in provinces where the federal system is applied than what they pay. So it is both an environmental measure and it's an affordability measure. Now the richest among us don't get more money than what they pay, but for low income and average Canadians, middle class, they do get more money back than what they pay in carbon pricing.
Okay. And we're witnessing a political transition south of the border, as you know. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's pro-fossil fuel policies are raising concerns among activists. How could this impact Canada and the rest of the world?
Well, I won't speculate on what the president-elect will or won't do. What I will say is that the fight against climate change has become certainly an environmental issue, a human rights issue. We've talked about this, but it's becoming more and more an economic issue. We're seeing around the world, whether it's the European Union, Japan, even in the United States, hundreds of billions of dollars being invested in the transition away from fossil fuels into cleaner energies, renewable energy, electrification of transportation. And Canada is certainly getting its fair share. Last year, worldwide, Canada ranked third in terms of being able to attract foreign investment in the country. So we're becoming, it's as much about the economy and jobs than it is about making sure that we're fighting climate change and reducing our pollution levels. And I think this will continue to be true regardless of what happens in this corner of the world or that corner of the world.
Mm-hmm. And you as minister, what are you looking forward to most at this conference? What do you think is some important work that'll be done?
Well, I mean, this is we're all in this together type of situation. Like no one can solve climate change alone. No one country, no matter how big or powerful. It's 190, more than 190 countries working together. It's difficult, it's tough, and it's sometimes frustrating. But we have an obligation to make it work somehow. And Canada has played in the past many years an important role. We hosted an international meeting in 2022 on nature in Canada, COP15, which was hugely successful, viewed as an historic milestone. So we're here to work with our colleagues from all around the world to help find solutions to this difficult problem.
Okay, Minister Guilbeault, thank you so much for joining us today. That's Steven Guilbeault, Canada's Environment and Climate Change Minister from the COP29 conference in Azerbaijan.
Thank you very much.